Hi guys, Ronnie here and welcome to the workshop. Today I'm going to talk about my Tarmac SL7, which many of you have been asking about. So today I'm going to share how it rides and what is it like to live with after a couple of months of use and having built a couple of different variations of the frame set with different builds for customers and myself included. So let's start with the build kit that I have on this particular bike. It's a bit unusual compared to my other setups. Firstly, because of the color. I generally tend to have dark black bikes, so this one is different. It's in the bright red flow color version, which I'd really like, to be honest. At first I didn't, but then it grew on me. Certainly looks a lot better than the plain black one, in my opinion at least. I'm sure many of you will disagree. The other reason I switched to this frame set is that it has nice, bright, bold, white S-Works logos on there, same like my head wheels. I'm sponsored by Head Wheels, so I really like those white decals to be seen, and this way it matches nicely with the frame. It didn't do that with the black frame. So that's that. Let's start at the front of the bike and with the group set. So again, a new thing for me is the Campagnolo Super Record EPS group set, which is the top of the line offering from Campagnolo, obviously electronic and hydraulic. I've been using this for a couple of weeks now. At first it was very strange, now I like it a lot, so thumbs up for that. The handlebar, I've been using various different ones on the Venge and also on the Tarmac. I had the Pro Vibe. Now I went back to the Aerofly 2, which again I really like. It's a nice handlebar, 38 centimeter width. Then I have the S-Works SL7 stem that comes with the bike. It nicely integrates with the front end and the headset area. This one is a 130mm 12 degree version, so a pretty aggressive setup, which I do like. The wheels, front and rear, as I said, are the Head Vanquish RT6 Pros, which is a very fast aero wheel set. It also is equipped with ceramic speed coated bearings throughout and is shod in S-Works Turbo Cotton 26mm tires, which nicely match with the shape, very wide shape I would say, of the rim. Yeah, then obviously the frame and fork are the Tarmac SL7s. I often get questions about the bottle cages. These are from a small German company called Carbon Works, and they weigh just 8 grams and look pretty cool, so I have them on there. For the cranks, there is a deviation from the Super Record group set. This is my trusty and well beaten Quark Dub SL power meter crank with the Quark D4 power meter spider with some Dura Ace chainrings on there. It's just a combination that I've been using for a while now, and it's super reliable. I like it a lot. The bottom bracket is a ceramic speed coated unit for the dub cranks, and the cranks also are upgraded with the Cane Creek preload nut just for extra security. It's fashioned out of machined aluminum, so much more secure preload than with the stock plastic unit, and looks a lot better as well. Then we have a deviation from the standard Tarmac frame set. This one is a Darimo super light seat post. Comes in at around 110 grams as opposed to 185 for the standard unit. However, the standard unit works just fine. This one though, nice little upgrade. Then another thing that's not so common, but I get a lot of questions about it, is the S-Works Power Mirror saddle. I really get on well with it, but more on that in a separate video. And then the rest of the bike is just complemented with the Super Record EPS front mech, rear mech, chain, cassette, brake rotors, 160 in the front, 140 in the rear. I really wanted to go 140 in the front, but then you have to have a different caliper with Campagnolo because they use no adapters, but one-piece units, and it just wasn't available at the time, so I stuck with this one. Maybe I'll change that in the coming months when it's available. And I also have a ceramic speed oversized pulley wheel system at the rear mac for extra efficiency. Okay, so this is pretty much what the part spec is like. Two things I forgot to mention. The bar tape is the Silca Nastro Aero, or sorry, Nastro Piloti. This is a very thin, very grippy bar tape that I really like. It's quite special from Silca. It's supposed to have a slight arrow shaping to it in terms of the pattern, so yeah, marginal gains. And another marginal gain is my Wahoo Element Roam mount. Again, this is deviation from the standard mount that comes with the bike and the stem, and it's 3D printed by MacCAD, and it's just a really nice flush finish and pretty secure as well. Also, if my bike was approaching the UCI weight limit, this has the option to bolt the Wahoo on it, to include that in the bike weight at the UCI check. But to be honest, this bike doesn't go that close to the limit. It comes in at 7.4 kilos without the saddlebag, everything else attached. So it's not a super light setup, but really it was never meant to be. The way it is built now, it has all the efficiency and aero benefits that I can get out of it without sacrificing anything in terms of comfort or usability, durability, etc. Okay, so that's pretty much how the bike is built up. Now a few words about how it performs over the long run. Okay, so to assess the performance of the bike, I'm going to start off with questions that I usually get about it and are reoccurring. So the first one: now that the Venge is defunct, what should I get as an aero bike? Well, this is an aero bike. It's a successor to the Venge and also the Tarmac, but it's a bike designed for racing. It's a full-on aero bike. It just happens that it's very light as well at the same time. So you might not get all these very radical shapings that, for example, the Canyon or the Trek Malone other bikes have, but you get basically 99% of the aero performance of those. How do I know that? Well, normally bike reviewers at this point usually say that they have no means of quantifying the data submitted by the manufacturer. Well, that's not the case for me. I have the No-Show Connect. I do aero testing. I have a lot of data on different bikes, different setups, etc. And based on some rough calculations, it's ever so slightly slower than the Venge, you have to admit that, but it's not going to be huge. It really just proven itself in the sprint stages, in the Tour, and all different kinds of races where aerodynamics really matter, and yeah, you know how those ended up. So really that's not something to worry about. But the upside is it's a very light frame set. So my bare frame came in at 770 grams in a size 52, which actually is quite a bit less than they claim for the 56. So that's nice. The fork, I didn't measure that separately, but also is lighter than the fork of the Venge, I know that. So yeah, you really do get best of both worlds, really. Some people say this bike is overpriced and overrated. Well, yeah, Specialized had a lot of haters in different communities, but if you look at it, Then, for example, the Dogma F is heavier and more expensive, possibly less aero. Same goes for, I don't know, the Colnago V3 RS, other bikes like that. In that range, they're basically all more expensive and not in the same realm of performance. So, or well, even if they are, they're more expensive. So, yeah, really can't say anything bad about that in this regard. Another common question I get is, since this is an aero bike, then it's no longer a pure tarmac, a pure road race climbing bike, then how does it climb? Well, this is a bit of cliche, and I really hate bike journalists for introducing this and other meaningless things they like to say about bikes. So how does the bike climb? Well, if you ride at 100 watts, it climbs slow. If you ride it at 400 watts, it climbs fast. So it's a bicycle, you know. The climbing speed is greatly affected by the rider. It's weight-wise, it can be built very light, so it will save you a couple of watts, but at higher speeds, even climbing speeds, you know, if you climb at 5-6 watts per kilo, you rarely go below 20 km per hour even on the climbs. And then the aerodynamics play a bigger role. So if you compare it to less efficient bike, yes, then it's going to climb slightly faster, but it's not going to make you a world-class climber, obviously. And where you do get a bigger advantage because of the aerodynamics that I was talking about earlier are the flats and the downhills, and that's where the bike really is very fast, at least compared to a non-aero bike, for example the Athos that I've tried earlier this year. So in that regard, it also ticks the boxes. Then we have other aspects, namely compliance and handling. Now, handling in a race bike is really important, because on the corners you can use a lot of energy. Then when you have to make it up elsewhere on the course, or you can even get dropped, and that's where confidence in your bike's handling really helps. And I have to say, this bike handles great. In fact, it handles better than the Venge. It has slightly better grip through the corners, slightly better feel, which is all subjective, I have to admit, but other customers having tried this bike can also testify to that. So yeah, in that area it is an improvement. As for the compliance, this is not a cushy, squishy endurance bike, obviously. It's not offensive, of course, but you do get road feedback. For me personally, it doesn't really wear me out. I'm used to these kind of bikes, but if you're looking to something more of a mile muncher, super ultra endurance bike for those kind of events, then maybe it's not the top pick. And also because of the aggressive geometry, it has quick pinpoint handling and pretty long reach, pretty low stack, so might not be the ideal use case for that. Although if you can tolerate those things over long distance, then it's very efficient. So yeah, might work out too in that area. Finally, let's talk a little bit more about how the bike is to build up, maintain, and use over a long period of time. In that case, again, it's a slight improvement in the Venge. So obviously the shaping of the frame and fork are different. That doesn't really affect much aside from the ride characteristics, but there are other things you should consider. So generally, this is a very easy bike to build. The front end is very straightforward. You have a separate bar and stem, of course, standard fork steerer diameter. So you have a standard expander plug in there. You can use any type you want. The headset itself is very simple. It uses these nice and large pretty resistant bearings, and they're exactly the same at the bottom and at the top. And if I remember correctly, they're also the same for each individual size of the bike, so that makes it very simple. As it happens, they're also identical to what is used in the Venge, so very simple. And then you have another part that I would like to point out. This is the headset preload cap that sits on top of the bearing. It's also where the brake hoses and cables are routed. So on the Venge this was one piece, now it is split with this little ring, so actually it's even easier to put together, so that's a nice little touch. Also, now the bike, after the update, it also accepts mechanical drivetrains, which the Venge couldn't do. So if you're into that sort of stuff, you can still do that. Again, going back to the headset, this is what allows it. So you have three different covers. This one is the one that I have installed on there, and it's for the integrated stem and electronic / hydraulic systems. Also, the other neat thing is the transition from the stem. You no longer have two separate versions to match two separate stem angles, so that's also very nice. The stems themselves come from 70mm to 140 in 6 and 12 degree variants, so you get a lot of options there. You can use any handlebar you want. The standard one comes from 38 to 44, although I would really like a 36 from this one, so maybe they'll do that in the future. Then you have one more variant for the headset cap. This is for the integrated stem but mechanical drivetrains. As you can see, those are routed on the sides, so not a fully internal setup, but comes as close as you can get with mechanical. And then you have the fully external setup. This is when you use a standard stem, not the integrated one, with its spacer stack. And this way you can use basically any drivetrain and any cockpit you want. So potentially, if you're looking for a super light bike setup that still has a very aero frame, then you can do it this way with some boutique exotic components. Then another improvement compared to the Venge is now the front mech mount is completely removable, and if you do that, you get a blanking plate also for that. So you save a little bit of drag in case you go one by, for example, for a criterium race bike. Very clean setup, and you can save a bit of drag with that one. Also, one thing I like to commend Specialized for is including proper through axles with the bike. So these are flush with the frame and are tightened with a 6mm hex wrench, unlike those stupid little levers that you get on some other bikes models, and those are not aerodynamic, they're completely unsightly, and the worst thing is that you can't tighten them properly. So in order to achieve the proper tightening torque and the clamping loads on the fork and the frame with the through axle, you really need to tighten it down to 12 to 40 Newton meters, and there's just no way you're going to do that with the stupid little lever. So this one 100 times better. Also, they use the fine pitch thread on the Specialized, so that's also a nice one because it engages very nicely, even if you use it with a torque driver when you're in a rush, in a race, for example. So that's all well and good, properly greased up and tightened, and then you no longer get brake rub at either end. Mentioning brake rub, one annoying problem that I always had with the Venge and its fork, specifically in the size 52, is that no matter which front wheel I used, I always got brake rub when riding out of the saddle. That's just something that's a result of the stiffness ratios and interactions between that fork and the wheel and the hub, and luckily it was solved on the Tarmac, so I no longer have that. which is pretty great. Saves a couple of grams, or sorry, a couple of watts of drag going uphill fast, so that's also a neat thing. Another neat thing is, of course, the introduction of the threaded bottom bracket shell. Yes, some might argue that it's potentially not as light and, in engineering terms, not as efficient as a press fit solution, but arguably in the real world it just works better, and it's much easier to replace, maintain, install, etc. And you also get a whole ton of variations when it comes to aftermarket options, crank compatibility, etc. So in that regard, it's just great. One thing that I don't really like compared to the Venge is this little rubber flap. It's not very useful. Sometimes it goes up on the seat post for no apparent reason. So it's supposed to protect the bolt from water ingress and the seat post, but it really doesn't, you know, it doesn't fit that snugly. As I've just explained, you can see that over here. But now I can't remove it without cutting it, because of course the cables for the EPS are going down. So next time I probably just wouldn't install it at all. Other gripes with the bike that I can think of, well, not really. The whole assembly and experience is very practical for the aforementioned reasons. So really not much to cause you headaches. If you're using a Shimano group set that also specialized, have a very neat little direct mount derailleur hanger that I like to use on customers' bikes. I also have it on the time trial bike, and it just works great. Also, little things that some brands don't really seem to have very well dialed are, for example, the faces of the flat mounts on the fork and on the rear. Chainstays is, well, if you tighten the brakes, they sit nice and flush. They're pretty easy to adjust and center over the rotor. They don't sit, you know, skewed. You don't have to remove the paint because it's already done nicely. So that's another neat thing that I've noticed compared to other bikes. So yeah, generally I'm very satisfied with how this bike turned out. I would probably accept it being a little bit lighter, but it's mainly down to my component choices. So the handlebar is not super light, the group set certainly is not super light, and the wheels are very deep, very aero, so I could save some weight there. But if I think about it, those 600 grams that I have to the UCI weight limit really won't make much of a difference, at least a lot less than people think, and the rest of the bike is pretty dialed, so I'm very happy with that. Okay, so I think that's all for today, all that comes to my mind and I think is worth mentioning about this bike. Just to sum it up, if you're looking for a full-on race bike that is very aero, very fast, but doesn't come with the usual set of drawbacks, then it does, you know, don't like to be a fanboy or anything, but really it objectively just does what it says on the box. So I can only recommend it. Easy to live with, easy to assemble, etc. So yeah, I would say in the current market, really worth its price. Okay, that's all for today. Thanks for sticking with me for this long if you did. If you want to know more about other pieces of equipment that I use in my training and racing, then don't forget to tune into the channel later on and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.